Hi everybody, my name is Larsen. We're probably all looking for new ways to comp and to create some variation in the way that we're interpreting the chords that we're playing. In this video I'm going to go over 10 examples of how you can make some tweaks and different interpretations of the chords on a 2-5-1 progression, since the 2-5-1 is one of the most common progressions in jazz. And you can of course use the examples that I'm playing here, but you can also just take the concepts and the ideas behind them and introduce them and use them in your own comping. If you're playing in a band, you're probably also aware that you spend more time comping behind other people than you do soloing. And that means you need to take that seriously and you want to be good at it. And of course, the better that you can comp, the more interesting it is and the better it fits the situation, the bigger the chance that you're going to be called for more gigs or sessions. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar, improve the way that you solo, check out some interesting arpeggios or chord voicings, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to make sure not to miss anything, then click the little bell notification icon next to the subscribe button. This example that I chose to call the Stairway to Heaven variation is really just using the line cliché as a way of creating some movement in the 2-5. So what I'm doing here is I'm starting with the 2 chords, so in this case that's just a D minor 7, and I'm playing it as a triad, so I have some movement in the melody, but I also have this voice, which is the lowest voice in the chord, but it's kind of actually in the middle of the harmony, because of course if you're playing in a band you have the bass under it. So, and that's moving down chromatically, so D to C sharp to C and then finally to B. And that's what I'm using here to just create some extra movement in the 2-5-1. So and then instead of thinking D minor the whole way, so I guess the way it works is that the first one is definitely just a D minor triad, then we get the D minor major type sound here, and then this is a D minor 7. Of course, if the bass player is not aware that you're going to do this, then he might play a G here, but then it's going to sound like a G sus, so it'll still work. And then I have this G7 flat 9 13 that I then resolve to this C major 7. And of course, if we can use Stairway to Heaven, then we can also use the James Bond variation. So that's what I'm doing in this example. I'm starting with just a D minor triad with an added 9 on top. Then I'm moving the 5th up to a sharp 5, like this. And then normally you would really just move it up to a D minor 6. But in this case, the way I placed it, it's actually turning into a G7. And then from here, I'm just changing the melody a little bit. And then resolving that to the C major 7. Another great way of adding a little bit of extra movement to a progression is to add a few diatonic passing chords. And that's what I'm doing in this example, where we would normally just have D minor to G7 to C. Now I'm walking up the scale, so I'm playing D minor, E minor, F major 7, and then finally G7. So the G7 is kind of delayed, which is kind of similar to the first example, and then resolve to C major 7. And then the way I'm doing that is that I'm playing these drop 3 voicings with just some variation in the melody. So then the E minor, F major 7, and then this G7, and a C major 7 that now I'm playing it with the root here. And this is a trick that I don't think you're gonna find it in too many books, but I'm actually playing 2 notes with my index finger, the C here and then the B here on in the 7th fret. So I have a C in the 8th fret and a B on the high string in the 7th fret, and then the rest of the C chord here. The Tritone Substitution is of course also a great way to just change the sound of a 2-5. Of course you have to be a little bit careful with whether it fits with the melody, but that actually goes for all the examples that I'm going to go over in this video. So here I'm just using the tritone of the G7, so that's a D flat 7, like here. I'm starting with this D minor 7, and really just adding melody on top. So moving to this D flat 7, and then resolving to the C major 7. If you're using the tritone substitution of the dominant, you can also turn that into a complete 2-5. So that means in this case that I'm playing first a bar of D minor 7, and then I'm turning the D flat 7 now into A flat minor, D flat 7. And the way I'm doing it here is I'm playing really a lot of different chords just to create some movement, and that's of course also a possibility if you're playing in a slower tempo to just add really a lot of different voicings and then play. I think you need to think in terms of melody when you're doing this. That's at least what I do. So I have this descending melody going through the entire progression. So first this D minor 11, D minor 9, then a D minor 7, and then another D minor 7. Then I'm moving to the A flat minor 7, 2 chords on that, then D flat 7, and then resolving to C major 7. And on the C major 7 I also have a bit of inner voice movement. That's another thing you can start working with, where I'm moving the B down to the A, but with a passing note. So I'm playing this one, and then just moving that voice. Another way that you can apply tritone substitution is to add some secondary dominants to the 2-5-1. In this case I'm doing it by adding a secondary dominant that's a tritone substitution in the D minor bar that's taking us to the G7. So I'm first playing half a bar of D minor, then changing it to an A flat 7, which is of course the tritone dominant for G7. And I'm using sort of a sustained F in the melody because that's in both chords. So first just the 3rd of D minor, 13 of A flat 7, resolving to G7, and then finally resolving to a C major with a 9. The reason that I can keep on publishing videos every week is that I have a community of people that are supporting my channel over on Patreon. I'm very grateful for that, and if you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. If you join us over on Patreon, I can also give you something in return for your support. A very elegant way to get some really beautiful sounding chords into your progressions is to have a major progression and then borrow some chords from the minor key. So that's what I'm doing here. In the 2-5-1 I'm first playing just this short fragment on the D minor, so, and then instead of playing the G7 I'm now gonna use a minor cadence. So I'm playing 2-5 from C minor, so that's first a D half diminished, and then a G7, and then resolving that to the C major 7. In the beginning of this video I had an example where I was using diatonic passing chords to create some extra movement. And another type of passing chord that you can also use is a chromatic passing chords. So that's what I'm doing in this example. So I'm starting with just D minor, and then a little bit of melody. And then on bar 4 I'm adding a chromatic passing chords. So in this case I want to go to G7, so I'm using an F sharp 7 as a passing chord. So, and then resolving that on beat 1 on the G7, and then just a small melody to resolve to C major 7. The Neapolitan Subdominant is another really beautiful chord that we can add to our 2-5-1 progression. And in this case I'm using it, even though it is a subdominant chord, so you would kind of expect it to appear in the first part of the 2-5, so on the 2 chord, but actually I'm using it on the 5 here. The Neapolitan Subdominant in the key of C major is D flat major 7. The way you want to think about this chord is that it's a minor subdominant chord, and if you look at the top part of my D flat major 7 here, that's an F minor, so the 4th degree in C is of course F, and then we have the F minor, so that's the minor subdominant part, and then we have this extra leading note which is the D flat, which is the root of this chord, and of course that just resolves really nicely down to C major 7. So the way I'm using it is I'm just playing first a melody on the D minor 7, going to G7, and in the second half of that bar I'm adding the Neapolitan Subdominant, and then resolving to C major 7. In one of the previous examples I was using a chromatic passing chord to take me from the 2 chord to the 5 chord, and of course you can do the same if you're going from the 5 to the 1. So that's what I'm doing here. So first we get the D minor 7, which is just sort of a short riff. In this case I'm playing rootless voicings just to change things up a bit, and then it goes to G7, and in the second half of that bar I'm approaching the C major 7 by playing a B major 7, and I'm doing that first with this voicing and then with this voicing, and then really just resolving that by moving it up a half step. If you want to have some more ideas and ways to think about comping that can help you improve the way that you comp, then check out this video. If you want to learn more about jazz guitar and this is the first time you see one of my videos, then subscribe to my channel. And if you want to help me keep making videos, then check out my Patreon page. That's about it for this week. Thank you for watching, and until next week.